Good morning, fans of the project. It's October 21st, 2012. It might be afternoon, but I think we're still good for the morning. And I do believe it's time for an oh, actually it's afternoon. It's 1:05 in the afternoon. So it's time for an update. As you can see, the frame is still in a relatively disassembled state. And let me get over here so we can get a good look at it all the way from the front to the back. There it is right there. We still get our, but as you can see, there's been some structure added to it, and that major structure, there's been two things added to it of structural intent. The first one, of course, being that roll bar right there. That was constructed over the course of about the middle of September, first couple weeks of September through to about the second week of October. And let's take a look at that, and we can go over the construction. I do have video of the build, and if anybody requests it, I'll post it. But if you go to the build log on lowcostusa.com and the non-traditional builds, you'll see the photo essay of how it went together. Anyway, this roll bar right here, this is a SCCA legal 1.5 inch 095 wall DOM tubing that I bent on my buddy Adam's hydraulic exhaust tubing bender, and it worked really good for this, even though I had to clean up the dies. You can see it's squeezed a little in the corners, but I'm not in right there the beginnings of a kink, but it worked pretty well, and I'm pretty happy with the result. And you'll also notice that it's set back at an angle. It's an 18-degree angle, and that angle mimics closely the angle of the seats. And the other thing that it does is it gets our heads, which would be right about here. It keeps us from clunking our heads into this thing on the side if we happen to turn our heads too quickly or there's a jolt to the side. It's braced with 1 inch 125 wall DOM tubing that I originally had bought to do because I have designed a do-over of the front control arms, but I thought it would serve better here as the bracing for the roll bar. And you can see there are some rather substantial gussets. The welds aren't too bad, although you can see this big ground off area here that looked pretty nasty. I've had kind of an epiphany about my welding, which we will get to, and which we'll get to in a minute. There's one that doesn't look too bad. There's one that's kind of ground down. There's a little blobby right there. But as you can see, there's decent heat sent on the tubes, and it's looking pretty good. These bracing tubes are, the bracing tubes are welded to the VS 1400 shock mounts right there, and you can see that they're welded to what was the original fender bracket mount right there, and then they are pretty heavily gusseted and boxed to, that one's a little easier to see, they're heavily gusseted and boxed to both the motorcycle frame and the dowel that was sticking out as well. They're gusseted and boxed both from above and from underneath. You can see right there that they look fairly beefy. So I'm confident that this roll structure will protect my noggin and make it a whole bunch easier to push the thing around, having a solid handhold right here. Since reversing this thing will be done by pushing, yeah. I'm not going to build a reversing mechanism for this. I have other fish to fry. I'm already thinking of the next couple of build projects anyway. So anyway, there's that roll structure, which I'm fairly happy with. It was attached to the tops of the frames. I had to make some brackets. I had to make some mounts for the frames. These are pieces of 2-inch by 125 thick that was notched and then bent and then welded to these tubes here, which you can see are doubled 1-inch square tubes, and then boxed on both sides. Box there, and then the roll bar was welded to that. I'm pretty happy with these welds. Those welds look pretty good. And then the next thing I did is the front shock mounts here. You can see that they attach to these doubled upper frame tubes right here on this side and on that side. But I wanted to brace them internally because I'm probably going to spring this thing fairly stiff, and you know, even though these are boxed and doubled, you know, you don't want to mount shock mounts and bending, basically. So what I did was I got some of my 1-inch 65 wall tubing. There it is right there. Excuse me, I got to kick a jack out of the way. And I made some other inner plates right here, you can see. And then I cut and mitered these tubes so that they would weld to the outside of the old XS850 motorcycle frame. And as I was saying, I kind of had an epiphany about my welding. One of the best things I did for this project, I think, is join up with the Low Cost USA site, because if you go to that site, you can see workmanship that ranges from terrible to absolutely awesome. And there are a couple of guys building vehicles that their workmanship is at a level that exceeds fine professionalism, I think, and that's something to strive to. And one thing I noticed was that their welds were always really, really pretty. And so I did some more studying, and I watched some more videos, especially videos that were done by a guy who's an official representative of the Miller Welder Company. And I realized that I had some improvements in my technique to make. So what I did, this structure here receives the benefit of that technique. And you can see right here, this weld is nice and smooth, and there's good heat sign, and the welds right here are nice and smooth, and they're not all blobby, and they don't walk all over the place. And this weld right here is nice and smooth. There's a couple bumps, but it's got nice meniscus and nice filleting. And this weld right here is nice and smooth. So I think my technique has taken an order of magnitude leap in excellence. You can see this one right here. That's real nice. That's real pretty. That looks good, and that looks good. And that's good in the corner there, and those good. That's good right there. And this weld. I mean, it's just I'm much happier with the way my welds are turning out these days, given the extra practice and a little bit of thinking. That doesn't mean that I think my other welds are bad or don't have good penetration, because most of them, I always made sure I had good heat sign, but they did come out kind of blobby and stupid. So anyway, we have the structure here that braces the shock mounts, and we have the roll structure here, which I have already discovered works pretty well, because I had to, in order to weld the bottoms of these things, weld from up underneath. Let's see if I can get a shot of that up underneath here. There they are. It's a little hard to see, but there they are. That's underneath. That doesn't look too bad. And then up underneath here. And that looks okay too. Sorta, you know. I basically had to wrestle this thing around and flip it over onto its roof, onto the top of the roll bar, and which was a bit of an ordeal. I would have to say that frame right there, as it sits right now, I haven't weighed it yet, but I would surmise that this frame weighs on the order of 150 to 180 pounds right now, because I can pick the rear end is heavier than the front end, and I can pick each end up, but I gotta exert myself a bit these days. It's not, I don't think it's the same thing where I could pick the whole thing up by myself anymore as it was when I moved it out here in April of 2011. Anyway, that's the major updates those are the major updates so far. And in all honesty, I'm getting very close. I'm getting very close on this thing. I have to add some seatbelt mounts. I'm going to have to take this plate out and add some seatbelt mount there and down there somewhere, or to this tube, and then and on the other side. And then I was going to, I had originally thought, let's look in here. Next thing is the control arms, and I've been looking at these and these welds in the corners right there, and wondering whether gusseting those would be a wise option. These are the tops, and you know, all the stress is taken to the bottom, and I've pretty much, on the bottom control arms, and I've pretty much made those. I did a bunch of work on those. I don't know if I probably showed those in another video, but this is the bottom control arm. You can see that I've gusseted the bottom of that with a piece of 1/8 inch plate, and I think that these things are probably pretty beefy, even though they look cobby and they're not real pretty, as some of the other straight round tube things that you see on lowcostusa.com, lowcostusa.com. But I was thinking of gusseting the upper, but I think I'm just going to bail on that and leave them as they are and get on with cleaning up the spindles and putting the front suspension back together. I think that's what I want to do, because I'm tired of this thing being disassembled. I want to start putting it back together. I have a thought that perhaps I can reassemble it. I can put the engine back in, and in between there run the electrics. You can see there's my big fat pile of wire that I got from the boneyard. I can put the battery in, run the electrics, and run this thing for the first time around the Christmas break, around my Christmas shutdown break, which I'm hoping will be the case. At any rate, and then I'll do another update, hopefully in November sometime, with more stuff going on. At any rate, that's it for today, and I'll see you later.